Welcome, but welcome. Yeah, so what a wonderful and lovely audience we have today. And I am honored to be the first speaker at today's Future Commerce Finland event. So I invite you to join me as we take a tech insider's look at composable commerce today. But before that, a bit about me. And if you have to know anything about me, you have to know what my favorite equation is. And it's that one. So I actually really like this equation because I derived it myself when I was playing a game of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, combining two of my loves, fantasy gaming and probability theory. I know I'm a nerd, but this had been an open, long-standing question in the D&D community, and no one had really found an exact answer to it, just approximations, and this is the type of problem that I love to solve. They are a little hard, a little complicated, but I learned from a young age just because something is difficult doesn't mean you should be afraid. And something else you should know about me is I drew this picture, and it is the art I regret leaving unfinished. When I was doing this, making this picture, I was playing around with lights and shadows and embedding textures directly to the paper, which permanently altered it and means I can't erase. And it got to a point, it doesn't really translate well to this scan, but the scales were actually like glowing as though they were real, and I had pushed to a point that the pressure got to me. I was afraid I would ruin it, and it got difficult, and I got afraid, and I didn't continue. And sometimes you have to learn a lesson many times until it really sinks in. But this is what happens when you can push, and this is me in a newspaper snippet, looking like it's the 1960s. But I had just made the rounds in some newspapers because of winning a national collegiate level poetry competition in English, which was hosted by the Embassy of Chile in partnership with my university, the University of the Philippines. And I didn't know it at the time, but one of the runners-up was actually a Carlos Palanca awardee, and the Carlos Palanca Award is the highest literature award you can receive in the Philippines, so it's like the Pulitzer Prize. This was one of my proudest moments at the time. 9 hours till submission deadline. I didn't have a single word written. I decided to give it a push. I let my heart speak, and I went with a strategy that was a little challenging, but I wanted to win it or win first or not at all. And it worked out. I did like an A-B rhyming pattern that was just like, I wanted to win on fundamentals. So I think like on the subject of excellence, what it requires is change, and what it requires is growth. And if you're afraid to push, if you're afraid to evolve, then excellence is not necessarily on the table for you. And it is with that theme of excellence that I want to deliver today's topic. I'm Rene Jr., the Director of Technology at IONA, and this is what we're going to be talking about today. First, we're going to look at the hype surrounding composable commerce. Then, we're going to look at the origins of the term in the 2020 Gartner report, which coined the phrase. Then we're going to look at the benefits of composable commerce. Then we're going to look at trends across the software industry. And finally, we're going to wrap it up with some keynotes and takeaways that you can bring back to your respective organizations and companies. So let's get started with composable commerce, the hype. This sentence was said by Gartner in 2020. By 2023, organizations that have adopted a composable approach will outpace competition by 80% in the speed of new feature implementation. And this sentence has been cited most from Gartner's seminal report, where they first coined the term composable commerce. So what if we checked if Gartner's prediction came true? What awaits us on the other side if we take away the hype? So a lot of articles try to explain composable commerce, and they cite this report. And it is like a long technical report, 15 pages, and they're trying to fit the concept in the span of the 5 minutes you have to read the article. So there is some simplification that has to happen, and that's fine. The thing, of course, is that it's been a few years, and if the only exposure you have to a certain idea is the simplified version of it, then you only see the simplified version, and you don't really see what the reality is, and therefore you don't really understand it. And if you don't really understand what composable commerce is, how can you take advantage of all the benefits that it provides? And the answer is you probably won't. So I'm here today to peel back the layers and empower you with the knowledge of what really is composable commerce on a deeper level, and hopefully give you the benefits and the ability to reap what composable commerce can bring, should you decide to take your organizations in that direction. So what better place to start than the 2020 Gartner report, which started the trend, right? So of course, we should maybe begin with looking for that oft-quoted sentence in the Gartner report itself, and we find it here under the banner of strategic planning assumptions. There it is. So some articles, not all, but some articles that try to explain composable commerce will cite that sentence as though it was like hard fact, as though it was like really a forecast backed by hard data. In fact, it's an assumption. And so maybe there is a gap in reporting, but this wasn't a mistake by Gartner either. What they did reading the report is they looked at the e-commerce industry as a whole and identified trends that were already happening. They gave a name to those trends, composable commerce, and that name took off. But the figure itself, 80%, that is actually not a forecast, it's an assumption. So it's worth asking the question, why did Gartner feel so positively about composable commerce? What did they see in it? Why did they put 80% on that report? Well, to answer that question, we have to know what did Gartner think composable commerce even was. So how did Gartner describe composable commerce? Well, they gave this diagram in the report showing like the disparate components of a platform coming together, and they said that composable commerce is customer experience centric, so it focuses on the experience of the customer. It combines modular packaged business capabilities, or PBCs, so such as cart, payment, transactions, content management systems. These are the words from the report. It delivers experiences with agility and flexibility. It requires a high level of digital maturity in the organization. And it delivers new features faster as opposed to monolithic platforms. Okay, now, half in the audience might have just gone, what the fuck did he just say? So don't worry, we'll take it slow. We're going to get to where Gartner is. Gartner arrived at an advanced conclusion via their study. I want to take a different route. I want to go and take a historical look at the concepts that led up to composable commerce, and we're going to end up in the same place that Gartner did, but at the end of it, we will be better equipped and with a more well-rounded understanding of what this thing really is. To do that, we're going to look at the benefits of composable commerce. So by the end of this section, you will understand what the benefits of composable commerce are. But we're not going to start with that idea. We're going to start with the idea that composable commerce is a rebranding of a microservice architecture. So in the Gartner report, they say that these capabilities, such as cart, content management, payment, order management, are called microservices. But that those capabilities were too big to be called a microservice. So instead of calling it a service or a macro service, they called it a modular packaged business capability, or PBC. And then they go on to say in the report that if you combine PBCs together, you get a composable platform. So recap, microservices equals PBC. Combining PBCs gives you a composable platform. Therefore, combining microservices gives you a composable platform. And what is another word for combining microservices? That's right, a microservice architecture. So now that does open the question, what is a microservice architecture? And half of the audience might already know what that is. If so, stay with me, there is still something for you here. But in order to investigate the question of what is a microservice architecture, we can go back to a tale as old as 2005. So once upon a time, in a land far away, there once lived a PhD in solid-state quantum mechanics named Peter Rogers, who presented the results of his research at a technical conference where he gave the outline of what would become today a microservice architecture, the first known iteration of it. What Peter Rogers said is service-oriented architecture meets Unix-like pipeline composition yields true loose coupling. He called this micro web services. Okay, so what are those words that I just said? Let me package up the initial part of that equation for you. So service-oriented architecture meets Unix-like composition pipeline, that is a microservice architecture. But that's not actually the interesting part. That's not the point. What Peter Rogers said is you take this part in order to yield the loosely coupled architecture. That is what we're trying to get at. It's not having microservices for the sake of having microservices. It's to get to this loosely coupled architecture. And so why is that so important? Well, this is where the puzzle analogy can help and step in. So if you imagine your entire platform as this full picture made up of these disparate components of jigsaw puzzles, each puzzle piece represents a capability, such as a cart or a payment or order management and so on. Now, if you want to remove one of those pieces, let's say you found a better cart, or your cart service is not, the current one you're using is not so good, maybe you found a more cost-effective option, then you can just take that piece out and replace it with another piece of the same shape without affecting the rest of your system. And that way, having a loosely coupled architecture is going to help you become much more agile and flexible in your delivery of software and features and capabilities. Okay, here's a question though. Is what I said true? So are those really the benefits of a loosely coupled architecture? Well, okay, I was pressing the wrong button. So in Google's Accelerate State of DevOps report for 2023, which is, by the way, the largest scientific assessment of the software industry as a whole, with more than 30,000 respondents from the software industry who are software professionals, spanning thousands of companies across companies of all shapes and sizes from various industries. And they do this survey every year. So every year, the data set grows. In 2023, this is what they report. They found the benefits of loosely coupled architecture to be substantially increased team performance. Those are the words from the report. A substantial increase in team performance. A substantial decrease in burnouts. A substantial increase in organizational performance. A substantial increase in job satisfaction. A substantial increase in operational performance. And a substantial increase in productivity. It even provides a minor increase in software delivery performance. So this is not accidental. This is a causal relationship found by Google such that a loosely coupled architecture yields these benefits. And that is what the data bears out. So now you might be thinking, what? So you're just telling me I need to go composable and I'll get all these benefits? Well, not so fast. The Gartner report also goes into other details, such as the issues that companies who adopted a composable approach early on encountered, as well as they provided a roadmap to getting there. For example, they warned us about the hype on headless. In other words, a lot of companies who went composable initially forgot that what headless means is not that you literally don't have a UI. Instead, you're not strongly coupled to only one UI. In other words, you can make as many UIs as you need on top of your headless architecture in order to support your business. Therefore, headless really is many heads, and that is the point of that strategy. They also tell us how to get to a composable platform, which is they cited Martin Fowler's 2005 article on the strangler fig pattern, which exactly details how you would migrate from a monolithic application to a microservices application. And finally, they remind us that business users must retain control over the presentational layer. This was a mistake that early adopters of composable commerce often made. Now, to be clear, this is these are things that could by themselves take up a talk all in their own. The time allotted to me now doesn't afford me the ability to go into detail for all of these. So if you are interested and you want to talk more about them, come look for me after the talk, or we can exchange emails. I'd love to talk more about this. But let's begin to wrap up by looking at some trends across the software industry. So what are your competitors doing? In the Accelerate State of DevOps report, which again is a yearly survey, what Google did, or what the DORA team did, the actual team that performed the study, is they took these respondents and performed a statistical analysis on them to find clusters according to certain performance metrics. And what they found was certain clusters are always overperforming compared to the rest of the clusters, and some clusters are underperforming relative to their peers. So now you might ask, what is the gap between elite performers, those clusters that overperform, and the low performers, the clusters that underperform? So in 2018, elite teams performed code deployments to production 46 times more than low-performing teams. That's not 46% more. That's not 46 more deployments. That is 46 times more deployments. In 2019, that was 208 times more deployments. And in 2021, that was 973 times more deployments. So the gap is actually orders of magnitude. The difference is a factor of hundreds. But that is just in the frequency of deployments. What about in the speed? How about the time it takes? Well, in 2018, elite teams were 2,555 times faster than low-performing teams. In 2019, they were 106 times faster. And in 2021, they were 6,570 times faster. And so now you might be thinking, oh, wow, in 2019, that gap really closed. Let me point out, that's still 106 times of difference. That is a factor difference of 100. And let's finally look at the speed to recovery from failure. So how quickly does an elite performing team recover from failure? In 2018, elite teams recovered from failure 2,604 times faster than low-performing teams. In 2019, it was the same. And in 2021, the speed difference was 6,570. So, okay, now you might be asking, like, who are these magical unicorn companies that are so elite and perfect who are able to do this stuff? Like, surely it's one or two, or like a handful, right? In 2018, that was 7% of the software industry who rendered elite level performance. In 2019, that was 20%. 2020, pandemic, no data. 2021, though, that is 26% of the software industry was able to yield this level of performance. In 2022, something happened. Maybe you have guesses. We're not entirely sure why, but there were no teams that rendered elite level performance. And in 2023, it bounced back strongly to 18%. That is this year, 18%. So I would like to ask you now, because like this is not a small portion of the industry, this is like a sizable chunk. So I'd like to ask you, where are you on the scale? Like, are you an elite team? Because if you're not, someone is outperforming you by hundreds, if not thousands. So I would like to leave off with some notes. So firstly, I would like to remind you to embrace technological advancements and strive for digital maturity. So there is no company today that doesn't use technology. Every company uses software. And we know that increased software delivery performance leads to better organizational outcomes. In other words, better software helps you accomplish your organizational goals. So if digital maturity is not yet on your roadmap, I would advise you to put it there and start thinking about ways that you can transform your organizations into one that is more digitally mature. Because if you're not digitally mature, the gap is not actually like 80%. The gap is orders of magnitude of difference. And finally, like this is really finally, I would like to remind you to steer clear of the urgency trap and to invest in your tools and your team. So a common issue that I see is organizations putting a lot of resources into putting out the biggest fire that's in front of them. So the most urgent problem at the time. And when they're done doing that, another fire is started and they put that one out. And then they keep doing this, round and round they go, never really getting anywhere. So instead of throwing all your money into that fire, instead you can invest in lasting positive change that would prevent those fires from happening in the first place. And you'll find that all those expenditures to put out those fires would have been unnecessary in hindsight. Don't put your resources into providing temporary solutions to temporary problems. Instead, create permanent lasting change. And you can do that by investing in your technology, investing in your tools, and investing in the skills of your people. That is the path to evolution. That is the path to digital maturity. That's all from me. I'm Rene Jr. Kiitos, tak. Thank you. Salamat.
Super, Rene. Thank you very much. We've got a 3 or 4 minutes, so I guess a couple of questions or to expand the conversation a bit further from me. I guess there are a number of people in the audience here that are either taking the early steps in Composable, that are on Composable, but I guess for those that are beginning to dip their toes in the water and move forward, you've begun to touch on it, but in a nutshell, why should they believe the hype?
So I would advise people to approach the hype with this understanding that there are more layers beneath it. What we're really looking for is the stability of the system and the speed at which you can provide for your clients the features and the bug fixes that they need, while not destroying your system while you're doing so. A problem with like moving quickly in old thinking is that you tend to break things and push and knock them down a lot. If instead you had a loosely coupled architecture, you had a composed architecture, then moving quickly will not have strong impact to the rest, and that provides you with the confidence and the speed that you need to be able to move forward with that particular issue. So basically, to wrap the question up is the hype, approach the hype with a sense of realism about what it really is, and what it underlies is really to create more stable systems that you can build from quickly.
Super, thank you. One other thing I'd say that Rene mentioned that I would completely agree with, when he said he is passionate and he would love to talk to you about this stuff, and he would love to talk to you about balancing cost with agility, he's actually serious. So please do grab Rene at some point during the break. His details are there. Please drop a line. He would love to hear from you and cheer off about this stuff. But again, Rene, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.